Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's main event, Making Marketplaces Mainstream, sponsored by Talmix and my good friends at Talmix. We have a great session for you today. I certainly hope that you brought your questions. I'm going to be joined by Sandeep Dhillon in a moment, someone who I deeply respect and who is truly a leader in this industry, in moving this industry forward. But before, as usual, I hope you enjoyed the speed networking. I know I did. I connected with more than a couple good friends and people who really are doing the good work in advancing this industry. And so without further ado, let's get this party started. So we went through the speed networking, and now my next job is just do some housekeeping and speak a little bit about what we're doing at Defiant and setting the stage for our greater discussion with Sandeep. So first, who is Defiant? We are two organizations primarily. Defiant Solutions is our consulting brand. We work with enterprises, talent marketplace providers, staffing firms, HR tech firms on the future of work, generating go-to-market strategies and resolving business problems. Defiant Events and Education. This is where we do our sponsored events, webinars, and trainings, both virtual and in person. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can host your own Defiant event, these are some actual scores of some of our recent events. You could take a moment and just simply scan that, take a picture of it, or put a question in the chat if you'd like. Another thing I highly recommend that you do, take a moment to post in the little session in the minute your LinkedIn profile. I find that it's great to share your contact details. My goal and the goal of Defiant Events is to advance everyone's awareness and professional profile so that we can all grow together and succeed together, which is something I think is really important. You'll see this is relatively self-explanatory. These are some of the buttons that you might see on the right-hand side. Share your thoughts with the group. When you post those questions, they'll be posted to everybody. If you want to post Q&A for us on the panel, McKenna's going to also be moderating that. So I really do encourage you to put whatever questions you have, questions you want us to address, put that in the Q&A section specifically. We will be having a poll. We have a couple of polls. And then also keep an eye out for announcements and alerts. As we move throughout the session, there'll be a lot of time for us to kind of go through those announcements and alerts over time. Keep on, sharing the thoughts. We talked about that just a second ago. I see a lot of you taking on the good work of posting your profiles into the chat. That is fantastic. That's what we're all here for, is to provide value, but also increase your network overall. We are obsessed about continuous improvement here at Defiant. As such, we really do pay very close attention to the surveys that we produce. This is the scan. You can take a moment to scan, and you will all be given a link to respond to that survey. This is something that we just ask every single event. Slides are going to be available to all attendees after the session for survey respondents. So when you get the survey link, if you respond to the survey link, we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides for your own edification. Additionally, all the Defiant events are available for replay forever. So if you miss the event, or for some reason you have to leave early, we certainly hope you don't have to do that. Want to stick around for the roundtable session? That's really the main event. You can watch this on replay, on demand, at your leisure. Just go ahead and click on those things. What we really want you to do also is we want you to continue this discussion, join the roundtable. Each of us have our own little roundtable. This is one of the more popular components of a Defiant event. I can guarantee you that this is where value is derived. You can talk with speakers, other folks in the industry, address your burning questions. And these tables are going to be open for as long as there are people talking. We've had conversations last almost an hour afterwards. So we certainly hope you'll join us and know that we're committed to continue our dialogue. So without further ado, I'm just going to take a couple of seconds to set the stage before we bring Sandeep up on. Just a couple of thoughts. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Defiant talent strategy. This is something that I think from a Defiant perspective, we deeply believe in this, and how we define the future of work is not necessarily focused simply in the past, like VMS and MSP. It's recognizing that human capital in all of its forms brings value to the organization. And so as such, you're supposed to be able to think about developing multi-channel approaches that include strategic considerations of multiple technologies, talent sources, engagement types, and be without boundaries to achieve those really competitive business outcomes. The best way to think about talent is in this metaphor that maybe some of you have heard me use in previous events. First is the metaphor of the pond versus the river. In the past, talent strategy was built around a pond or a lake or sort of a fixed mentality. filling your pool with one type of labor, one supplier mechanism, one category of labor, building a talent pool that's specifically just for you and kind of hoarding those skills. In the future, what we're seeing is the pace of change and the level of skills and experience necessary to be successful in 2024 and beyond. It's more of a river. Talent is a river. Knowledge is a river. And your goal as a program manager, as a provider, is to be able to create as many mechanisms to engage in that river and many lines to pull that river so that river of knowledge is constantly flowing and you can connect to that river of knowledge on demand in real time. What does that mean? That means that you need to be able to consider multiple modes of engagement, not just having an optimal supplier base of staffing firms, but multiple locations, geos, marketplace technologies and the like. And that's why I'm really excited about this particular session today, because I deeply believe that the incorporation of a talent marketplace in some form or fashion is critical to be able to develop a robust talent strategy that is adaptable and anti-fragile and stand the test of time in a competitive marketplace. So the successful strategy is one that incorporates this in all of its forms. So that's the big thing I want to take. That's my huge takeaway. That is the end of my component. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Sandeep to share his wisdom and insight. So we could get him up on stage. Sandeep, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. Great to be here again. How are you?
Good. And let's dive right on in. So did you find anybody, what did you learn or who did you do in the speed networking session?
Really interesting individuals. One person who's developing an analytics solution or already has developed an analytics solution for statement of work spend. And I think interestingly, what flows from that is the real importance of having data on your talent, which we'll also talk through as part of the marketplace as well. So by using technology-enabled solutions such as a marketplace will allow you to actually have the data to then be able to make effective decisions as well. So it's certainly a key component, but it was very interesting.
Exciting stuff. And again, my favorite part is the speed networking, connecting with others.
So great.
So let's get started.
Absolutely. So just stepping back again. So we've had a few webinars on marketplaces, and this is kind of the next stage where we're talking a little bit more about how to implement this a bit in a programmatic fashion. But firstly, to start with, what is a marketplace? So in a very simple approach, and this is really where the client and the marketplace is interacting directly outside of a program, which is really where most of the current marketplace activity is happening. So to set the scene, it's really a technology and a solution which allows hiring managers to fill those ongoing skills gaps by accessing talent on demand, essentially. And so the marketplace itself is the technology and the service in the middle, which is connected to an active and engaged network and generally uses some form of matching technology. So the requisitions would come from the hiring managers, go into the talent marketplace. The matching process would happen. I think on this slide, what you'll see is what we have specifically is like matching scores. So we would put a matching score against individuals that are on our network against the specific requisitions. And those with the higher matching scores are generally better fitted. So those would be put forward to the client. So very simply put, it's a way for hiring managers to access talent wherever they are in the world on demand in a very quick fashion. Marketplaces themselves generally do three core things. So there's a matching element I've talked about. There's a contracting piece as well. So helping streamline some of that contracting process as it relates to finding those individuals, and payments as well. And the payments will vary. Most marketplaces will act as an agent of record. Some also act as an employer of record, or some, such as ourselves, we partner with other employer of record providers as well. But that's kind of a marketplace in a nutshell. So thinking about how it would actually fit within a program, I think the way that stepping back, marketplaces should really be part of that overall omni-channel talent strategy. So historically, within many programs, staffing suppliers are used quite broadly. Direct sourcing is something new, or it's been around for a little while, but certainly being integrated a lot more as another channel or another talent strategy. And marketplaces really, I would see, is supplemental to that. So it's really providing with an additional source of talent rather than replacing existing sources as well. And the way that would fit in is you have your talent needs coming into the vendor management system, if there is one, managed by the MSP, if there is one, and then there's obviously the payment provider underneath that as well. And the idea here is to not disrupt that system that's already there, but find a way to integrate the marketplace into that ecosystem. So on the slide before, I showed you that direct process when it comes to a hiring manager coming to a talent marketplace and accessing talent. You essentially want to take that and fit that in a custom way within the actual overall extended workforce stack. Because specifically what we realize is clients already have established processes and quite a wide stack in place already. The really important thing when it comes to selecting and integrating a marketplace is it needs to fit within the existing processes in an efficient way so that you can use it alongside your other sources, such as direct sourcing or other staffing suppliers.
I think one of the challenges that we keep on running into is that many organizations are very interested in exploring marketplaces as a source of talent, but oftentimes they just shoehorn them into a traditional staffing arrangement. That's not something that we think is really an effective use of these sort of mechanisms, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. And I will also sort of allude to that later when it comes to thinking about SLAs and processes because they work differently. You can't just take the standard metrics and standard processes and fit them in. The idea of the marketplace, in theory, it should be a very efficient way to access a broader pool of talent. So the way that you engage with that, yes, there'll be similarities, but there's also quite a few differences as well in how you engage with a marketplace. And then stepping back to sort of see where we are in the evolution of marketplaces. So the early marketplaces, many of you may have heard of, such as the Upworks and Fivers, they were really focused on digital creatives and typically smaller size projects and generally managed by sort of marketing departments or marketing heads that were looking for that digital creative on demand within a company. After that, there was an evolution of more marketplaces appearing, particularly in different talent categories. So across, for example, technology or developers, and we're in the business or the consulting end as well. And I would say where we sit right now is there is a widespread usage of talent marketplaces across many organizations, both large and small, but it's quite ad hoc outside of programs. So really where it would fit is within that rogue spend category. So this is where hiring managers are using their own sources of talent because they're not accessing or able to access this talent through the central programs. And because of this problem, which I think everyone is seeing, so there's a problem in terms of the program managers and owners are noticing there's a lot of other providers coming into the ecosystem that are not in the approved central bucket. And at the same time, both MSPs, the MSs are realizing there's a lot of other contingent spend happening outside of what's already been agreed in the program. Then what we certainly are seeing is there's an increased interest in adopting marketplace technologies within that extended workforce stack that I talked about earlier. So we're kind of in that stage right now where there's widespread usage and now the early adopters are trying to work out ways to integrate marketplaces within the programs.
So can you give me an example of where we would feel a marketplace would be an appropriate fit, like a use case that maybe people can kind of conceptualize? This is really great insight in terms of strategically, it's just kind of can't speak, strategically looking at, the journey, but maybe a particular use case. Someone's asking for a very particular use case for this particular.
Sure. So one of the advantages of marketplaces is that there's a deeper pool of talent. So for us specifically, we are a global network of people. So we've got talent across the world. Now, if I just give an example, one of our customers, large financial services company, was needing to access talent in multiple regions. Now, the way that they were going about it before they started using us a number of years ago, for every individual region, they would have to find a new staffing provider to provide them with essentially consulting talent that can join their product teams within their business. So it's quite inefficient for them because they have to onboard a new supplier every single time. They then also have their own talent that they have with using a payment service provider for that. So essentially they had a whole lot of suppliers that they were using to get similar type of talent across multiple regions. When they came to Talmix, we were able to offer them talent across multiple regions in a central platform streamline the whole onboarding process, make the whole procurement process far simpler, also provide them data back. So we're able to regularly give them information to say how much what the rates are of the individuals they're hiring, how much they're spending in different regions. So not only do they get the advantage of having one or at least fewer suppliers to access that same type of talent across multiple regions, they then also get consistent data and information, which you otherwise don't get if you've got a host of different staffing suppliers that a lot of the time don't actually track some of the information and data in a consistent fashion.
Mhm. So one of the things that we talk about all the time is that many organizations are looking for particular pools of talent, maybe like high-end consulting work that will not uh, engage in a traditional talent supply chain. Marketplaces enable companies to be able to access that particular type of in-demand talent um, in such a way that maybe they might not have through their traditional staffing channels.
So now I think the most important thing as you think about should you be implementing a marketplace in the program is really what are the actual overall objectives of the program and particularly aligning that to the business objectives. So we see three clear benefits of integrating a marketplace, and this is coming from specific client feedback that we get as to the reasons why they want to implement a marketplace and why they are implementing a marketplace. Firstly, there's just the ability to find talent faster. So in the current environment, given the pace of change is extremely fast, the skills gaps, as we all know, continues to grow. And many companies are trying to take more of a skills-based approach. It's really important to get people in and out of your organization quickly as and when is needed, depending on the projects and also potentially new technologies and new technologies require new skill sets. So how do you get those within the organization in a quicker fashion? So marketplaces, because they're set up in a very technology centric way, having an active and engaged network allow you to access that talent very quickly. So marketplaces offer speed of access, the convenience, which I kind of alluded to earlier when I was talking about having one or a few marketplaces that can give you access to categories of talent across multiple regions, rather than having so many different companies providing it across across what your needs are. And then the precision piece as well, given that we are using a more technology centric approach, using a lot of data, using very specific taxonomies, we're able to match a lot of information very quickly. So for us, we have a data set on the talent. It's not just a CV, it's very much a continued build of their work history. Because as and when they do work, they put more information on our platform, or as we call it, talent passport. Every time they apply for work on our platform as well, they're giving more information on specific project work. So what that means is next time when we're matching, we've got more information on that individual to make a much better quality match. So talent marketplaces, by using this data-led approach, are able to make more precise, quicker matches on that front. So really find, and fundamentally from a business perspective, filling that seat or filling that project much quicker, which is really where a lot of the issues come from losing revenue, losing opportunities because you've got open positions as well. The second part is really about extending that visibility. So extended workforce now is accounting for a significant proportion of customer spend. One customer we spoke to, did not really have a hold on what that rogue spend was outside of the main program, because hiring managers have individual budgets and they have certain ability to hire using external sources for the purposes of having speed and innovation. So the procurement teams are giving them the freedom to be able to hire people quickly. But the challenge is that there's also issues with where they're hiring from. It can be a variety of different sources. And again, the data is not consistent or centralized. So in that instance, spend is happening outside of the program, and there's not much control of how much is being spent or where it's being spent. And actually, one of the other risks also when you do use a number of different agencies outside is compliance is obviously an issue as well from that side. So by having marketplaces installed, which are using a technology-centric approach, the data piece comes with that. So you're getting more visibility as to where and how you're spending the money is being spent on the extended workforce. And then that kind of leads also into, the cost benefits that come from it. So there are potential cost savings from this, both in terms of having fewer suppliers, so having a more streamlined process whereby you're not having to onboard multiple different suppliers. So you're saving on the money there. And then also you optimize the spend as well. And particularly in a marketplace perspective. So the way that we work is clients come to us with a budget. We'll put that out to the marketplace, and we'll also have then profiles for them to review. And those profiles may be at budget, below budget if there's more availability. It can also be slightly higher than budget if it's specialist, but a lot of the time what we find is when clients come to us, we're normally within budget and sometimes below budget as well. So because we're going out broader to the right people quickly, that gives you the opportunity to have options as it comes to cost as well. So finding talent faster, really extending that visibility across the workforce, and potential cost savings and optimizations as well. Those are the three key areas. There are clearly a lot more, but the most important thing as it comes to the program is make sure it's completely aligned with what the business objectives are within the organization.
I think the finding talent faster is critical, but also really growing your program and extending the penetration of your program. These tools are super, super critical to be able to hit many, many client groups who, frankly, often don't play nicely within traditional MSP VMS programs. So really, really excited that when you look at these tools to be integrated into your overall strategy and maybe focus on creating instances where groups that may not want to play nicely do so. I just want to call out that we just put a poll up trying to gauge your experience with different marketplaces. This is just that we'll share after the event, but please take a moment to complete the poll for an answer in.
So now once you've kind of aligned on your program and business objectives, and how do you actually make those mainstream and how do you implement them? Again, we see there's three key considerations. I think the first part is buyer education, which I'll go through it. And then optimizing the whole process and workflows. How does that marketplace integrate within the workflows and the technology? And then finally, and very importantly as well, how do you maximize success through measurements, etc. So I'll start with the first part, which is buyer education. Thanks.
Apology.
So on the buyer education, so based on our experience and what we've kind of implemented so far, we really see is three key buyer sets. I think the first one is really who's setting the agenda, and that is within the large companies, the program owners. That could be, sorry, contingent leads, procurement leads, human resources. It can be a blend or a mix as well. It really just depends on the organization. But these are the individuals that are responsible for implementing solutions that can make accessing talent to fill those skills gaps a lot quicker, and managing the overall extended workforce program. So, and that's the first category, which requires education, both in terms of, which market, what the advantages of our marketplace, and then specifically as well, which marketplaces to use as well. So I think I've mentioned before in one of the other webinars as well, there are a number of marketplaces that cross different categories. So as a company and as a program owner, we need to decide which ones best fit my business. So that can be regionally or it can be across category as well. So if you don't need access to multiple regions, then you may just look at, okay, I'll look for a more localized marketplace. If you're a global company, you'll likely want to have a marketplace which covers at least a few regions, or at least, the full global remit as well. And then when it comes to the actual talent categories, you need to look at where do you expect more of the spend to be in terms of, are you expecting a lot of technology or developer capacity? Are you expecting a lot of consultants or design and creative? That will really determine which marketplaces you want to put out to tender in terms of joining your program as well. And then as part of the education piece, having the program owners on board is extremely important, because when it comes to actually implementing the program, I think it's really important for the marketplace and the other partners in the ecosystem to educate the hiring managers within the organization itself, which I'll talk through later. The second key buyer set is really the ecosystem itself. So that includes managed service providers, VMS, EOR, AOR. We as a company have spent a good amount of time educating and speaking to a number of providers in this space to really define kind of what the value is on that side, and specifically what the key differentiators are of a marketplace, particularly that speed, availability, and deliverability capability. So as an example, if you're an MSP and you've got a requisition from a client and you need to put it out currently to multiple suppliers who cover different categories, the way it would work right now is you would distribute it to a supplier, and that supplier may or may not be able to do it. If it fits within their core category, you'll just have to wait until they actually come back to you with what can they fill that category. Now, we use a data-led approach and we've got a matching algorithm. So essentially, as soon as we get the requisition, we're very able to work out what the liquidity is of that type of talent on our platform. So if we've got a high score on the talent match, we can quite confidently say to the MSP or through the VMS, we can absolutely deliver on this. Or if it's a slightly weaker score, we can say we can deliver on this, but it'll take slightly longer. So that's just an example of the ability of a marketplace to use data to enable a very quick decision, which then makes the life of a MSP a lot easier when it comes to distributing to suppliers. So they'll have more confidence then when they receive the requisition that this supplier will be able to fulfill that need as well. And I think the other thing as well with regards to educating in the ecosystem is really the SLAs piece as well. So as Bryan alluded to earlier, marketplaces are different from staffing firms, and therefore I know that SLAs are very embedded, particularly as it relates to staffing suppliers. So if you're an MSP, you've got quite a few standard SLAs out of the box you can use if you're onboarding another staffing supplier. Because the marketplaces work slightly differently, it's really important to have more specific and some different SLAs as it relates to the marketplace. And the important thing is work with the marketplace to come up with what those specific SLAs are. And then, as I'll mention later, an important part is to continue to refine as you get more volume within there as well. And then the final part of the buyer education, again, one of the really important parts is once a program is kind of up and running or implemented, it's really continuing to educate the hiring managers and understanding what they need as well, specifically as it relates to their business objectives, so that they can get the most out of the marketplace as well. Again, one thing we found as well within large enterprise, because the MSPs have typically worked mostly with either staffing suppliers. The rogue spend at the moment is happening with hiring managers that are not currently as engaged with the MSP because historically they've not been able to access specific categories of talent. And so therefore it's the responsibility of program owner plus the MSP plus the marketplace to educate the hiring manager on what the benefits are and how to use the system. So it's an opportunity to have more hiring managers across the business engaged with the overall MSP program.
As we're looking at that, one of the things I see that a lot of people who answer the poll say they have experience. Please feel free to include in the chat things that you feel have been especially helpful in your own journey. Just because we're up here talking doesn't mean you can't help contribute. And maybe if you'd like, we could even bring you up on stage to ask a question or share the talking point. So in the chat, feel free to share your own perspectives.
Great. So as Bryan mentioned, these slides will be shared after, so don't worry too much about there's a lot of information on this slide, but I just want to talk more high level on this. So I've mentioned it a few times, the real importance of data and understanding data sources, which is extremely important, particularly as it relates to the overall optimization of the process. So the advantage of having a marketplace is you will have access to data sets and information that otherwise you might not get through just using traditional staffing suppliers. So for example, in a situation where ecosystem partners are used, an MSP, the requirements data is something which is fit through the VMS into the talent marketplace. So fundamentally, one of the things you get back from the talent marketplace is that talent data. So, and it's not just a CV, it's actually more detailed in-depth data. As I mentioned, we have a lot of information on talent, which doesn't necessarily always exist on a CV. And so there's a lot of extra information and data that you can get from that perspective as well on that side. And as a marketplace within our talent category, within our global remit, because we have the aggregation of data across clients and requirements, we also have a read for different talent data and trends as well. So, for example, one thing we do is we've got the Talmix Atlas where we share data and information as it relates to trends in different regions and geographies for clients specifically, because we have that information set on our systems. We're able to aggregate it and also provide data on how they're using contingent talent, what the rates are, how the rates are changing as well within specific regions. So it allows them to make decisions a lot quicker as it relates to where they're spending and how they're spending as well. But essentially, with the most important part as you think about putting this program together is what's the most optimum way to have the process and the data flows in order that the program owner in the middle is essentially getting all the information that we need to make those bigger decisions as the program continues to grow or change.
I love this graphic. I think it's a great sort of overall flow. Just I got a direct message already. We will talk about where this fits into the traditional VMS MSP process in just a minute. So don't think we forgot about it. We're trying to get ahead of these things.
Um, so we've talked about educating the buyers. We've talked about sort of the process optimization piece, and now talking about maximizing success. So based on our experience, I think the most important thing we can say is collaboration is key across the different stakeholders within the program. So really important that the marketplace and the ecosystem partners are talking regularly, are integrated and working together, possibly have partnerships in place so that it's all kind of already set up. And the program owner isn't involved in this as well. So I'd say marketplaces are not just something where the marketplace and the ecosystem partner can just, sign on the dotted line and then it just kind of works. It's really important that the program owner is involved as much as possible as well, so that it can make sure that it completely aligns to the business objectives as well. And then as the program continues to grow, then it's really important to get information on the results and the impact by, that feedback from the hiring manager. So collaboration is absolutely key when it comes to setup, running through the first few projects that come through, and then the SLA piece as well to make sure that the measurements of success are in place and everyone is on the same page as it relates to what those are as well.
We have a question, Sandeep. Let me see, read it from here. It's from Siva, which is, do you have APIs and do you recommend APIs or can you tap in the APIs from a third-party platform for example, to benchmark data related to rates in different geos, et cetera, things like that?
So our platform is built with an open API framework, so we can absolutely connect to different platforms. But for us, as with everything, it's kind of what is the business case to do that. So it's something that can be done. And I think if that makes sense, and the way that we look at it is the clients that we currently work with, what systems and processes are they using and integrate as it relates to that. But absolutely the way that we built our platform is such that that information is distributable to different technologies and different formats for clients. The client wants information in Excel because they're uploaded somewhere, we'll do that. The client wants it in a different system, we'll make sure we'll integrate on that front as well. For us, it always has been is what systems are the client using, and let's build and push the information into the right place. Okay, so this maybe I think you alluded to earlier, Brian. So this is an example workflow of what it could look like as it relates to a requisition coming through that MSP and then the BMS and EOR type of flow. And I'll go through it in a very high level fashion. Again, we'll share this. First thing to know very much is, the important thing is it should be customized to the individual client. Some clients will use aspects of this. So for example, they more than likely, if there's a large client, they'll have a VMS and MSP. They may have an employer record, agent record. And as I mentioned as well, a lot of marketplaces, including ourselves, do the agent of record piece, but don't do the EUR piece. Some do both, some do neither. So it's really quite dependent. But very simply put, and I think one other thing I'd like to note as well, there will always be some duplication across some of these flows. So there will be elements that are done on the VMS, which might be done on the marketplace, that might be done on the compliance and onboarding piece. And those elements of duplication, I think, are removed over time rather than on day one. So important thing is let integrate and then optimize and then, automate as much as you can within reason from that perspective. But in this flow, the requisition from a hiring manager, a lot of the time will go to the MSP via the VMS. The VMS will then pass the requisition to the talent marketplace. It could be pushed into the talent marketplace system or just by email, whatever that system is. But the marketplace will then essentially launch that opportunity to the platform, which then, if it's a similar marketplace to us, will match the relevant talent. The relevant talent are then invited and apply. So they put forward an application with their information. That information then is in the talent marketplace. The talent marketplace will either review and then push it back into the VMS. And then that's either reviewed by the hiring manager, who will then provide feedback. And again, there'll be some back and forth here, because depending on what that relationship is, where the hiring manager might be working closely with the MSP, or the hiring manager might be working directly with the talent marketplace. I think the real important thing is there's no perfect system where it's one flow. There will be a variety of different ways that hiring managers will engage with the talent marketplace, possibly directly, possibly through the program. But the important thing is that the systems and workflows are connected together so that at least the information flow is consistently recorded as well. But once the feedback comes through, a lot of the time the marketplace will provide the feedback to the talent, organize the interview, etc., with the hiring manager. Once the offer is accepted, the onboarding, potentially vetting, compliance may be done by a third party, or parts of that may be done by the marketplace. The worker will then start on the engagement, and then there'll be a continuous way of either invoices being approved and feedback provided. And then in terms of payment, as I mentioned before, in the direct flow, where the marketplace is the agent of record, generally they will pay the talent. But in a situation where the client has a separate employer of record or agent record, then they would be responsible for that as well. This is just a very high level example. The real ones are more extensive, because you need to cover all different eventualities. Most important thing is it's customized to the individual client need. And I think continue to revisit this, set it up first, get a few projects through it, and then work out where the sticky points are, and then continue to refine the mapping.
We have another question from the audience. Keep them coming, guys. This is great. Is preferred classification taken into account earlier than at the point of vetting? How do we take into account preferred classification, both the role and the individual?
Sure. So preferred classification wise, so we've got clients that actually do not want any of agent record, for example. We just want to have people payrolled or employer of record because of risk. In that situation, when we as a marketplace put it out to the network, we'll be very clear this will be a payroll type of engagement. So that's the first point. Second point is, we as a marketplace, particularly as it relates to the type of talent that are joining our network, the vast majority are independent contractors that are taking multiple opportunities through the year, or at least, it's not typically one employer for multiple years. So the type of talent on the platform will then also determine that. But the real classification, an initial classification can be done based on client is asking for this, and this, would this fit within a more employer type of engagement or a consultant engagement? Let's put it out to the network in the right form. And then when the talent apply, then the full vetting is really done at the point at which it's getting close to that offer or hire. So because it is very project specific, because the nature of the arrangement can change depending on what the actual engagement is. And I think the other thing we notice as well is that because particularly the category that we work in is a little bit newer because it's at the consulting or business end, is sometimes the scope of work and what's to be achieved takes a little bit longer to define than it would, let's say, if you wanted a Python developer. So it's a lot more clearer. Whereas if you're looking for, a change manager or a PMO, there'll be a lot of variances in terms of what they're expected to do. So there'll be a little bit more back and forth between the hiring managers, which will then potentially impact the classification. So the short answer is there is some classification done up front, but absolutely the full classification is done at the point of hire.
Yeah, there's two dimensions of the classification question, which is when does the role qualify? And oftentimes that's something that can be done or kind of understood at the front end of the process. So does the role qualify for independent contractor status? And then the individual could have some element of kind of pre-knowing because if they have the LLC, existing structure, other business structures, then you kind of know that sort of thing going in. So it's not really until the whole package is put together that you can determine the true IC status component. There are certain elements of it. But again, every role is different and every role is different in time as it moves forward. We have a question, another one, Carrie, from Gary, which is, what is the typical pricing model for this service? Is it a license? Is it per hire? Is the end client charge, or do we charge the worker themselves? I love this question. Thank you, Gary.
So the pricing for vast majority of marketplaces is a transactional fee, so a percentage markup, and based on the cost of the talent. That's generally how it's priced. Specifically for marketplaces, it will vary depending on the talent category, the complexity, region, but a lot of marketplaces in different segments have broadly sort of market rate pricing on that front. Then in terms of the MSP, it depends on how that's charged. I think particularly with a lot of the time what we find is the negotiation on pricing actually is done in coordination with the client. So it's not just agreeing the price with them with the MSP, for example, and then the client is not involved. Not a lot of the time the client is involved in negotiations on the price and the markup on that front. And then how that is charged will vary, within, I think, particularly I think in North America, MSPs typically take the fee from the suppliers, whereas in Europe, it's kind of done slightly differently. So it depends on the program, but it's not, it's really a percentage transactional fee on top of the cost of the talent, which will be, on top of obviously the MSP and VMS fee.
Yeah. And the big element is that we don't charge the talent necessarily, right? That's something that a lot of people are very, especially with the certain ESG rules and things like that. Some platforms do charge talent to participate in the program. Others don't. So I think that's certainly a question that I know we typically don't.
No, and I think that, when you charge the client, at the end of the day, their price will go up. So eventually when you charge the talent price will go up and therefore the client will pay in the end. So it's just another way to package the same price if it's being charged that way. So, and again, from that EC perspective is really important as well, because particularly with talent as well, they are putting a lot of effort and time as it relates to looking for these opportunities as well. So it's really important to not have too much friction up front, particularly to get the best people as quickly as we can for the client.
Very much so. And we'll carry on the pricing conversation in the roundtables because, again, pricing and revenue are like two of my favorite topics.
So just to kind of summarize on what's next. So where we are right now is, there's the process of the early adopters of talent marketplaces now starting to bring into programs, building those workflows. A lot of the workflows are sort of put in place. There's a lot of manual exchange of different data sets. I think the next stage very much is more seamless integration. So particularly as it relates to integrating the marketplaces more with software within the enterprise. So that could be the VMS. It could be, as I was referring to earlier, analytics platforms as well. So the next stage is very much that. But the important part of that is we need to get, most marketplaces need to get more volume in and more experience on that workflow working before we start to put some of these technology integrations in place. But the important thing is most talent marketplaces in terms of their technology should be in a sort of open API framework. And so again, when you're thinking about selecting a talent marketplace, look at their technology. You might not be using all the components of the technology, but you should at least see, can this talent marketplace pass the data across to the systems that I have in future when it makes sense to do that integration? So I think that's really important. So I think the next stage we'll see is that seamless integration. And then as part of that, the overall really widespread adoption and usage of talent marketplaces. And the most important part of that is really that buyer education as it relates to getting more of those hiring managers using the central programs more systematically across all talent categories.
Excellent, Sandeep. Thank you so much for this incredibly valuable session. We're going to get ready. That's the end of our prepared content, as it were. This is some contact information and a little bit about Talmix. We're going to stick around for your questions if you have any back and forth, and we'll carry on. But really, what we want to do is head into our roundtable sessions. So what we're going to do is if you have any final questions just for general conversation, please put them here. But we certainly hope that you'll join us at the roundtables. We specifically made a point of ending this particular content early so that we can get everybody talking and connecting with each other and having some more interactivity, which is a hallmark of the sort of events that we have here at Defiant. So stick around, join the discussion, continue with the roundtable. Again, how do we do? Take a moment to scan that and enter your server results. And if we don't get a chance to scan it, we're going to be sending this to everybody afterwards. But without further ado, we hope to see you in the roundtable sessions. Sandeep, any final thoughts before we go to roundtables?
No, thank you very much for organizing this, and I hope everyone found it useful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was great interactivity. And we look forward to seeing you all in the roundtable sessions.